afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, whoever you are. Thanks so much for joining us here on our first ever Left, Right, Goodnight podcast. My name is Rich Warner, Rich Banger Warner. I'll be your host for today, and every week we'll be bringing you the biggest and the best Aussie fight news, fighter info, rumours and gossip around all sorts of combat sports, but mostly MMA every single week. So today's episode, we're going to keep it pretty short, try and keep it short and sweet. We will have a bit of a look at a couple of people. One is Rob Razor Wilkinson, who's been fighting for the PFL, and of course Shane Mitchell, Adelaide's own Triple A. Shane Mitchell, who's obviously fighting in 1 week's time at the PFL, Professional Fighting League Championships as well. But let's quickly catch up on who Rob Razor Wilkinson is. By the age of 17, I think he was watching Randy Couture in the UFC, and he decided he wanted to be a UFC star. He was a personal trainer at the time, started training in MMA, obviously been with the one club, as in Hybrid Training Centre, or otherwise known as HTC, for about 14 years, I believe he's fought under HTC. And he's amassed an amazing record around Australia, amazing career. I think he made his debut in about 2011. And he won 11 fights in a row around the country. Won all fights via stoppage, but one. And he holds 9 out of his 11 fights finished in the first round. So really, really super exciting fighter to watch, Rob Razor Wilkinson. He captured 2 Australian belts. One was with AFC, the Australian Fighting Championship middleweight title. And then, of course, he went to Brace MMA, Brace middleweight championship belt as well. He collected as well. So he submitted German Alexander Popek in the first round in Finland. And then he got the big call up to the UFC. Massive, massive big signing, Rob Razor Wilkinson. He made his promotional debut at the UFC on 2nd of September 2017 on the Volkov versus Struve fight night. He got a late call up, and of course, as an Aussie fighter, you've got to take any opportunity you can get into the big stage. Got a late call up against Bahadazada. I don't know if I've said that right, but he did fight against Bahadazada in his promotional debut under the UFC. He lost that fight. So 11 fights in a row, he's won, most of them in the first round, gets to the UFC and loses his first ever promotional debut against Bahadazada. Lost the fight via TKO at round 2, first ever career loss. So being the UFC, the bastards that they are, they thought, we'll give you somebody even harder since you lost. Doesn't really make sense, but that's the UFC. You know who they gave him next? They gave him Israel Adesanya. Wow, Israel Adesanya. So he lost that fight as well. So 2 out of 2 fights in the UFC didn't work out so well for Rob. Lost that one in round 2 as well via TKO against Adesanya. But as you know, look, it's Israel. I mean, is that really a loss? But that was in 2018. At that point, after losing to Adesanya, the UFC released him. So really, really disappointing for him. He's gone 2 fights at the UFC, lost both of those, and then released immediately. This guy is way, way better than that. I believe the UFC are very disappointed in their decision, because Rob Razor Wilkinson, if they kept him, he would have been an absolute showstopper for them, and he's gone on to bigger and better things. Probably been pretty disappointed from his UFC day, couple of fights there. And what he did from that point in 2019, he started doing kickboxing. He went and fought 2 kickboxing bouts. He's also done a bit of boxing as well, a couple of boxing fights as well. But he did 2 kickboxing bouts. He won both of those by knockout, and got obviously a kickboxing record of 2-0. 2 years goes by whilst he's doing kickboxing and boxing, and then he comes back to MMA. He says, I'm going to change things up. I've been the middleweight title holder of two different promotions, and he decides to come back, but this time, instead of fighting at middleweight, changes it up and goes up a level. He obviously bulked up a lot in those couple of years there, and he's put on a lot of muscle, and he fought in the light heavyweight division against Dylan the Villain Andrews. Now, Dylan the Villain Andrews, Australian champion as well. I think he actually fought in the UFC a few times. Dylan the Villain's Queensland fighter, and I think he may have fought under the Ultimate Fighter series, the Smashers contest, where Australia versus England Dylan the Villain. Didn't do too well there, but he did get a contract and fight a few UFC fights. But so Wilkinson fights against Dylan the Villain and at light heavyweight and wins. Won in the first round by a rear naked choke. Really, really great win and great comeback from Rob to get that win. Then in April 2021, he gets the call up at Hex Fight Series in Melbourne to fight Daniel Almeida, who is again another Australian superstar champion. He won this one by first round knockout, winning, of course, the Hex Fight Series light heavyweight championship. So really, really great fighter, Rob Razor Wilkinson. Disappointed in himself with his UFC, a couple of fights that he had there. He then gets an opportunity to fight Sam Kai. Us at Diamondback Fighting Championship here in South Australia, we know Sam Kai. He's fought for us before. Really, really great fighter. I think he's probably ranked the number one fighter in his division, light heavyweight at the moment in Australia. That fight with Wilkinson didn't actually take place. It was scrapped last minute due to unknown reasons, but it turned out to be something really good for Rob, because at that point, the PFL, Professional Fighting League Championship, was starting to do their searches and started to find out the best fighters in the world that aren't currently signed to the UFC. Rob Wilkinson was one of those. He gets the sign up to PFL, massive stage. PFL 1 comes around at the start of last year, 2022. Rob fights under PFL, the first ever one there, and he fights a guy called Bruce Suto on April the 23rd, PFL number 1, wins that by ground and pound, technical knockout in the second round. So great comeback from Razor. He then gets through to the next round, which is in June in 22. He's got 4 fights to win, and of course PFL, if you don't know PFL, they offer you $1 million if you win 4 fights and you win the championship, $1 million. So a lot of UFC fighters probably pretty jealous of that, I would have thought. So he fights Victor Pesta on June 17th, won that one by TKO stoppage in the first round, as per usual. Rob Wilkinson gets the third fight versus Dylan Monte, semi-finals in August the 5th, PFL number 7. Wins that bout again in the first round, knocked out Monte after landing a huge knee and then finishing off with some beautiful ground and pound punches to completely finish the fight, putting him in the $1 million fight for the championship. This one is against Omari Akhmedov, November the 25th, 22. Now, this is a fight that I'll never, ever forget. If you want to watch these fights on PFL, by the way, you need to get a Stan Sport subscription, really super cheap. And the great thing about Stan Sport is you just go to the sports, you get to watch movies and all that sort of stuff as well. Go to the sports section, go to combat sports and MMA, and you can watch every PFL fight that's ever happened over all of last year. You can watch Rob's amazing journey throughout these 4 fights that he had to get to the championship. And of course, against Akhmedov, he fought like an absolute dog. He's an absolute gun, this guy. Australian fans, you've got to get behind Rob Razor Wilkinson. Smashes Akhmedov, cuts him open early. At the end of the second round, Akhmedov goes back to the stool, and doctor says to him, mate, you can't see out of those eyes. He cannot get back off the stool. Rob wins $1 million bloody dollars. Amazing, amazing, amazing fight. So huge win. Rob Wilkinson, first ever fighter from Australia to win a championship under the PFL. And $1 million November last year. So 2023 season comes around, PFL comes back, says, Rob, you're going to fight again. Here's another contract for this year. And last Sunday, he fought his first ever for 2023, his first ever fight. The funny thing is that PFL this time, they said, well, we need to give this guy a bit of a challenge. And they changed things up a little bit. They invited and signed up Thiago Santos. Now, he's the Brazilian with the big Thor hammer tattoo on the chest there. This guy, Thiago Santos, has fought 34 fights before. He's been around. He's fought the best of the best. If you will look on YouTube, you'll find that Santos fought Johnny Bones Jones and arguably won that fight. If you look at the first round that Santos fought Johnny Bones Jones, he was one of the first ever originators of that low calf kick. And you know Santos, he's got tree trunks as legs. He kicks so hard. He kicked he almost grounded Jones in that first round by a low calf kick, just dropped him completely. Then he comes and follows up. He fought a real patient game, Santos, against Johnny Bones Jones, and he comes forward with a beautiful combination, just straight left. Straight left, right hook, straight left again, knocking the mouthpiece of Jones out right across the cage. Almost had him done in that first round. Definitely won the first round, and arguably a couple of others. Of course, Bones Jones has been in quite a few fights, and he ended up getting the decision win. But, geez, Santos took it to him. He's a very, very, very hard puncher and a hard kicker. He's a knockout artist with 34 fights and 68% knockout finishes. So 68% of the fights that he's ever been in, he's knocked a guy out. And so now he's going to be fighting Rob Wilkinson last Sunday, PFL, first fight of 2023 in the light heavyweight championship for $1 million. Amazing, huge, big call for Rob Wilkinson to beat Thiago Santos, one of the guys who's been around and fought the best of the best and taken it absolutely to the line with them. Really clever game plan Rob went in with. I think that he was going to, in a couple of his interviews before he fought, he talked about that he's much more of a well-rounded, he's got a great well-rounded game. He's not just a striker. He's not just that KO artist in the first round that everyone's seen before. And he took that into the cage confidently. Massive big combinations coming forward and then changed levels beautifully. Dropped down to get multiple double legs. Multiple very, very clever takedowns against Santos. Not wanting to fight from the outside against Santos, the massive big, haymaker punches and kicks that he had. Didn't really cop much of damage against Santos. Really beautifully fought. Very, very smart fighter, Wilkinson. Took him down multiple times, mostly double legs, mostly coming forward like a freight train, changing levels and just turning him on his ass, putting him down and landing a lot of ground and pound. 3 rounds in a row. Santos, the last minute of the third round, realised, geez, I've got to do something here. I'm definitely losing. I've hardly landed anything throughout the whole fight. And he turned the afterburners on, and almost like that Pereira Adesanya fight where he just came in that last minute, and Santos did the same thing. He hit Wilkinson quite a few times, especially with about 2 seconds to go, copped the biggest straight right that you've just about ever seen land, flush on the chin of Wilkinson, who didn't flinch. He ate it like a sandwich, raised his hands as the buzzer went, and of course won unanimous decision. So first fight in for 2023, Rob Razor Wilkinson. Australian fans, you've got to get behind this guy. He is an absolute amazing Aussie champ. I believe he's going to take it all the way for the next year and probably win another $1 million in 3 fights' time. He's taken out probably the biggest competitor in Santos in the PFL light heavyweight division already. And I think a lot of Aussie fighters are watching Rob, watching Razor Wilkinson, seeing what he's doing and seeing the money that he's earning and thinking, geez, you know what, I'm not in the UFC yet, haven't been able to break into that, but maybe this is a great opportunity. One of those fighters is Shane Triple A Mitchell from South Australia, cardio flex killer. Now, this guy is a friend of ours, a friend of most South Australians who followed him on the local scene for quite a number of years, and a superstar knockout artist in himself. He's won multiple belts across Australia and had an amazing career. Really changed his game 4 or 5 years ago and got much more well-rounded on the ground as well as just being a knockout artist, and has got a couple of submissions under his belt since that time as well. And a few months ago was fortunate enough to sign with the PFL too. So I'm sure that Shane Mitchell was watching Rob Razor Wilkinson last week in his fight thinking, it'd be nice if I could do the same thing. Now, Shane Mitchell's a great friend of ours, and he's been training super hard. And if you want to learn more about Shane Mitchell and who he is, there is a fantastic podcast, everybody, called the Daily Combat Podcast. Now, check that out. Subscribe and like and share that one as well, because a couple of weeks ago we had Shane Mitchell on for about an hour or so podcast, fantastic podcast where we went through and broke down every single fight that Shane has had thus far. Really interesting, really great guy to get to know, really likable guy, Shane Mitchell. And it's a really great podcast, Daily Combat Podcast, and with Matt Hollywood Connolly and the wonderful Dave Stockbridge and myself. We're doing that one, and check that out. Goes for about 1 hour. Really informative. Now Shane Mitchell is fighting on the April the 14th in 1 week's time. It's on, I think, a Saturday. And if you're in South Australia, we will all be going and meeting up at the Bridgeway Hotel from about 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. in the afternoon. We'll be watching all the PFL fights there, including, of course, the great Triple A Shane Mitchell. Now, Shane's been kind enough to give me a little quote to tell you guys, exclusive little interview for you about how his camp has been for this particular fight, the biggest fight of his career. I can tell you this, he's fighting a guy called Naib Cachorro, or El Cachorro Lopez. Now, he's Mexican, of course, and be wary of Mexican fighters. They've done so well over the last year, winning multiple championship belts in the UFC. This particular guy, Cachorro, is 15-0. So on paper, he is undefeated, and the big question is he as good in the cage as he is on paper? His record is amazing, 15-0. I believe that Shane will win this, and I think that maybe that Lopez might be a little bit better on paper, and his record looks pretty good on paper, but I think Shane Mitchell will beat him in the cage, because I think the standard of some of the Mexican fights that he's had so far haven't been to the same standard that Shane has had thus far. He's fought Australian champion after Australian champion. So I believe Shane's pretty undaunted, but he gave me this little quote this morning to tell you guys about his latest camp. And he says this, quote, "It's been great, my camp so far. It's the longest notice I've ever had for a fight, possibly in my whole career." So he's been able to really prepare his body, prepare his mind, know exactly what he needs to do. He says, "I'm feeling fit and I'm strong and even bigger than ever before. I've definitely put on a bit of muscle mass over the past 12 months, so I'm coming in leaner, but even more powerful." Shane is an absolute beast, an absolute warrior, a knockout artist, somebody who's about creating amazing power from very short distances. It only takes a quick straight right, a shovel punch, or a beautiful left hook for him to do the damage. We've seen it time and time again. Shane's pretty undaunted by Lopez as a prospect, and I believe he's going to walk very confidently into the cage on the 14th of April. PFL, Stand Sport, everybody check that out. Now, of course, this weekend is Easter. It's a long weekend for Easter, and we're all looking forward to seeing Israel Adesanya beat the shit out of Pereira. So good luck, Adesanya. We'll be all in Australia supporting and watching that event. Don't miss out this Sunday. Check out that card under the UFC. But most importantly, April the 14th, Stand Sport, everybody. Get that subscription and support Shane Triple A Mitchell in his journey to also winning the $1 million, as well as Rob Razor Wilkinson. So much love to both you fighters, and make sure if you're in South Australia, get down to the Bridgeway Hotel on the April 14th as well to support. Shane Mitchell does have some amazing T-shirts as well. I'm wearing the Coming for the Honey T-shirt as well from the amazing Pooh Bear Damien Volar, Australian champion as well. But you can get a Shane Mitchell T-shirt at the event, or shout out to Shane Mitchell or Cardio Flex guys on Facebook to get your personalised T-shirt to support Shane in his journey over to Las Vegas to win in the PFL. I'll also be there at the Bridgeway Hotel. I think we're also going to do a live broadcast from the Bridgeway Hotel. That's the Daily Combat Podcast. We'll be streaming live for the whole event. So that'll be a fantastic day to tune in as well. Well, that's about all I have for you today. Thank you very much. That's the end of our first ever podcast on Left, Right, Good Night. I've been Rich Banger Warner, and please stay safe over Easter. Have a very happy and safe Easter. Don't get into too much chocolate, of course, and make sure you support Israel Adesanya this weekend. Until next time, guys, please subscribe, like, and share, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much.